Hello student, good morning. I hope you all will be safe and sound as we have started this history, and in the previous video the first chapter, some of the part we have explained like about the James Mill and how he periodized the history, and before it we have also talked about how much important the dates are for us, and as well as which dates are quite important. And after this one, the remaining part, what they have given, see, that is, in this idea of history, British rule represented all the forces of progress and civilization. In this idea, whatever the idea has been given by the James Mill, who was a Scottish missionary, and the political philosopher who belongs from the Scotland. So, in this idea of history, so what he told and what he said, British rule must be represented in all the forces. Anyhow, the British rule must be in the Asian continent, mainly in India, for the progress and for civilizing them. Okay, the period before British rule was one of darkness. So he just told the period before means in the period before it, the British rule, it was one of darkness. Can such a conception be accepted today? Can we accept this perception, whatever they have given about the darkness of the British rule? Can we accept it by today? In any case, can we refer to any period of history as Hindu or Muslim? Did not a variety of faiths exist simultaneously in these periods? Whatever the variety of faiths were there, can it exist together in these periods? Why should we characterize an age only through the religion of the rulers of the time? So, whatever the questions have been asked over there, the answer has been given. To do so is to suggest that the lives and practices of the others do not, that is, really matter. Whatever that has been suggested, whatever the lives and the practices, whatever their lives and whatever the practices of other people at that time, it really do not matter. We should also remember that even rulers in the ancient India did not all share the same faith. Even they have given whoever the rulers in the ancient time, very old time in our country, even they did not share the same kind of the faith or belief. Moving away from the British classification, historians have usually divided Indian history into ancient, medieval, and modern. So moving away from the British classification, as that has been done mainly by the James Mill. So if you go through the other historians, what they did, they usually divided the Indian history into 3 volumes, in the 3 parts, that is ancient, medieval, as well as the modern. This division too has its problem. Whatever the division that has been done, it has also its own problems. It is a periodization that is borrowed from the West, where the modern period was associated with the growth of all the forces of modernity, like science, religion, democracy, liberty, and equality. So here they have told whatever the historians have done, that is the periodization of the history, mainly in the ancient, medieval, and modern. It was also having the problem. Why it is so? It is a periodization that borrowed from the West, from the Western countries, mainly from the Europe. It has been taken from there, where the modern period was associated with, where the modern period, it was related to with the growth of all the forces of modernity, where there was a modernity mainly in the field of science, religion, democracy, liberty, and equality. Okay, then after this one, medieval was a term used to describe a society where these features of modern society did not exist. And here they have what they have told here. They have just told whatever the medieval period that was described by the historians, it is mainly to describe the societies where these features of modern society did not exist, where that they have given the upside, that is where the science, religion, democracy, that is freedom, and the equality, these all the modernity was not there. So this sort of the society they describe as medieval. Then after this one, they have given here, can we critically accept these characterization of modern period to describe the period of our study? As you will see in this book, under British rule, people did not have equality. As whatever the chapters and whatever the upcoming part we will study. So in this one book, in this one you will come to know under British rule, people did not have equality. The people, they were not treated equally, and they didn't have the freedom or liberty. Nor was the period one of economic growth and progress. So many historians therefore refer to this period as colonial. So whenever the British rule was there, when whatever the we were under the control of the Britishers, so this period has been just described and referred by the historians as colonial period. Colonial period means to say under the British rule. Now they have explained here what is colonial. In this book, you will read about the way the British came to conquer the country and establish their rule, subjugating local Nawabs and Rajas. Mainly in this one book, we will come to know about the British rule, how they conquer, how they got control over the country, and how they just implemented their own rule, and how they just subjugated. Subjugated means to say how they control, how the local Nawabs and the Rajas, they work under the Britishers, and we will also see how they establish control over the economy and society, collected revenue to meet all their expenses, bought the goods they wanted at low price, produce crops that needed for export, and you will also understand the changes that came about as a consequence. Mainly in this one book, whatever the chapters they have given, in the coming chapters, we will just see and we will just have a discussion over how they just establish their control over the whatever the economic resources, and how they have control over the society, how they used to collect the revenue for whatever their expenses were there, how they bought the goods what they wanted in the lower prices, and which sort of the crops they were having the need for exporting to the Western countries, how they just forced to the farmers to grow these crops, and we will also see whatever the changes that occurred during the British time. Okay, you will also come to know about the changes British rule brought about in values and taste, custom and practices. And in this one book as well, we will come to know whatever the changes that occurred and whatever the practices were being done by them. Okay, and whatever the customs and traditions were being just implemented and established by them. When the subjugation of one country by another leads to these kinds of political, economic, social and cultural changes. Whenever any country is in the control of someone and is in the control of another country, so definitely it leads these kind of changes mainly in the field of political, economic and social changes. We refer to this process as colonization, and this whatever the process they have given, whatever we have discussed, this process came to be known as colonization. You will however find that all classes and groups did not experience these changes in the same way. And we will also come to know whatever the classes and whatever the groups and whatever the societies people, so they did not experience these changes in the same way. Mean to say whatever the things have been changed and whatever the things that occurred during that time, so it didn't just affect in everybody's life. That is why the book is called Our Past in the Plural. Okay. Then after this one, how do we know? What sources do historians use in writing about the last 250 years of Indian history? So after this one, they have given how and what the sources the historians use for writing, that is about 250 years back, for writing the Indian history. The first thing they have given, administration produces records. One important source in the official records of the British administration This is the administration, whatever the records they used to keep with them. These official records are one important, very important resource for knowing about the British rule. The British believed that the act of writing was important. Every instruction, plan, policy, decision, agreement, investigation had to be clearly written up. Whatever the planning, whatever the policies were introduced by them, so whatever the decision, agreement, and whatever the investigation was being done by them at that time, they believe that they must be in written. Okay, then once this was done, things could be properly studied and debated. Once, if we will write these all the things, so definitely the whatever the things have been written over there, it could be properly studied, it could be properly inspected, and they can be debated or discussed. This conviction produced an administrative culture of memos, noting, and reports. Whatever this process is there, it just gives a sense to the administrative department, that is about the culture of memos. Mean to say, culture of memos mean to say whatever the things have been written by them, so it will be kept as a record and noting down each and everything, and as well as it will provide the report and records at that time. The British also felt that all important documents and letters needed to be carefully preserved. So the British, they felt that whatever the all important documents are there and letters were written by them, so these need to be very carefully reserved. Preserve mean to say to secure them, to save them. Okay, then so they set up records rooms attached to the administrative institution. So for this one, they just set up a record room that is near to the that is attached with the administrative offices. The village Tahsildar's office and the collectorate, the commissioner's office, the provincial secretariat, the law courts, all had their records room. Whatever the they have just at that time, whatever the person they have appointed over there, like the Tahsildar's office, okay, and that is collectorate. Okay, you might have seen the collectorate here nearby to the Vikas Bhavan. Same like this. Okay, these sort of the administrative offices they have created, and what they used to do, they used to just kept over there whatever the things have been written by them in the record rooms. Specialized institutions like archives and museums were also established to preserve important records. As we have read in the previous classes as well about these things, so they have just created the archives where we can keep the records, and the museums are also just established by them to save and to secure the important records. Letter and memos then moved from one branch of the administration to the another in the early years of the 19th century can still be read in the archives. So whatever the letters, whatever the memos they have written at that time, were these all the records have been moved from one branch of the administration to the another branch in early years of the 19th century, in the beginning years of the 19th century, and they could be still read in the archives. You can get these all the records in the archives. You can also study the notes and reports that district officials prepared, or the instructions and that is directives that were sent by officials at the top of the provincial administrators. So in these archives, if you go through, if you visit, so you can just see whatever the things, whatever the reports have been just prepared by them. So these can be just, you can find in these archives whatever the officials has sent these reports to the provincial administrators. Whatever the regional administrators were there, so you can check over there. In the early years of the 19th century, in the beginning years of the 19th century, these documents were carefully copied out and beautifully written by the calligraphist. Okay, so in the beginning, in the starting years of the 19th century, so what these documents, what has been done over there, these were carefully copied and these were written in by the calligraphist. Calligraphist means to say that is by those who specialized in the art of beautiful writing. Calligrapher mean to say who were having an art of beautiful writing. These are known as the calligraphers. Okay, so they used to write, they just copied and they have written these all the records. By the middle of the 19th century, with the spread of printing, multiple copies of these records were printed as proceeding of each government department. So whenever there was the invention of printing press, so what happened? Then they just they just printed out these documents and in the multiple copies, in many copies, and of these records, these were printed and just proceeding of each government department, and these copies were sent to the each government departments. So here one of the building they have shown, the National Archive of India, came up into the 1920. So you can see over here how the archives were made for keeping these things. Now survey became important. Which sort of the survey they used to do at that time, what sort of the survey and the inspection they used to do, that has been given here. Okay, the practice of surveying also became common under the colonial administration. For surveying, for inspecting, for just observing the particular area or a region, so it also became very common under the British administration. The British believed that a country had to be properly known before it could be effectively administered. So were the Britishers at that time, they believed that if you wanted to just control or do the administration over the particular country, so at first it need to be properly checked, it need to be properly known. Okay, by the early 19th century, detailed surveys were being carried out to map the entire country. By the starting of the 19th century, what the Britishers did, very deep or detailed survey they have done, and it was carried out to map the whole country. In the villages, revenue surveys were conducted over the villages areas, countryside areas, so the revenue survey were done over there. The efforts was to know the topography, the soil quality, the flora, the fauna, the local histories, and the cropping pattern, all the facts seen as necessary to grow about to administer the region. So in the villages areas or in the area or in regions, what they have just inspected over there, so which sort of the topography is there, whether the land is plain surface or rugged. Okay, this is the topography. This means just surveying about the surface of the land, which sort of the quality of the soil is there, the plants, about the animals, about the local histories, about the cropping pattern. These all the things came to be known by Britishers. From the end of the 19th century, census operations were held every 10 years. As we all know that the census that has been also started, census mean to say that is the counting of the number of the people, and still it is continued. So the census, it is being held in our country exact after 10 years. Okay, this mean to say that is the Janagana in Hindi we say. This was also done by them for knowing about the number of people over there. These prepared detailed records of the number of people in all the provinces of India, noting information on caste, religion, and occupation. And these all the things had been done by the Britishers at the time, whatever the provinces, whatever the states were there at the time in our country, noting down their caste, their religion, as well as about their occupation. Then there were many other surveys, botanical surveys, geological surveys, archaeological surveys, anthropological surveys, and forest surveys. These other kind of the surveys also being done by the Britishers at the time. Then what official records do not tell. Whatever the official records they were having, what it didn't tell us, that has been given. From the vast corpus of records, we can get to know a lot, but we must remember that these are official records. So whatever the records they have kept with them, so we can get many things from there, but we must remember these are official records. These are only the official records. They tell us what the official thought, what they were interested in, and what they wish to preserve for prosperity. Means whatever the records were there, it only tell us about the officials, which sort of the interest they were having in the fields and whatever the things for getting their profits and their prosperity. Okay, then these records do not always help to understand what other people in the country felt and what lay behind their actions. These records, whatever the records have been kept by them, it do not tell us about the life of the other people, about the native people, about the Indians. Okay, then for that we need to look elsewhere. For that we have to be just go for elsewhere. Why it is so? When we begin to search for these other sources, we find them in plenty, though there are many more difficulties to get than official records. So if you go in the search of the other sources for finding about the other people, so they are mainly we find them in plenty, in a huge way we can get them, though they are more difficult to get than official records. But it's very tough and it's very difficult to get these records. We have diaries of people, accounts of pilgrims and travelers, autobiographies of important personalities, and the popular booklets that were sold in the local bazaars. So if you want to know about the life of the common persons, life of the natives, so we can get these things and we can come to know about these things, whatever the diaries were prepared at that time by the people, and whatever the pilgrims, okay, whatever they have written, and about the travelers, and about their autobiographies of important personalities, and as well as the popular booklets that were sold in the local markets at that time. As printing spread, newspapers were published and issues were debated in public. As we all know that invention of the printing press, so newspapers were published at the time, and whatever the issues were there, these were discussed and debated in the newspapers and publicly. Leaders and reformers wrote to spread their ideas. Poets and novelists wrote to express their feelings. So here they have told whoever the leaders were there and the reformers were there, so they wrote about the lives of the people and they spread their ideas by just publishing in the newspapers. And the poets as well as the novelists, they wrote to express their feelings. All these sources, however, were produced by those who were literate. Definitely, who know how to write and how to read. So these people are known as the literate people. Okay, so these all the things were produced by the literate persons. From these, we will not be able to understand how history was experienced and lived by the tribals and the peasants and the workers in the mines or the poor on the streets. So, however, from these records, whatever the record, British records and whatever the local records that has been just maintained and just given by them, so we will not be able to find and we will not able to understand how history was experienced and lived by the tribal people and the peasants, the farmers, the workers in the mines or the poor on the streets. Getting to know their lives is a more difficult task. Getting to know about their lives during past time, it is more difficult task. And yet, this can be done if we make a little bit of effort. So we can get about them. So if you make some little bit efforts for it. When you read this book, you will see how this can be done. So when we will read the upcoming chapters in this book, so we will come to know how their lives have been affected. Okay, this is all about the chapter we have discussed. So this is you can go for this video and watch it. Then we will go for its question answers. Okay.